Hello, good morning to you, those of you in the UK, and hello to everybody else elsewhere in the world. Welcome to another Debrett's webinar. Delighted that you could all join. And those of you who know anything about the UK will know we're in lockdown at the moment, so you join me once again in my home in a small cottage in the Cotswolds and not the Debrett's office. Anyway, it is a pleasure to welcome you all here anyway. As you know, obviously being in lockdown, we don't get to go out much these days. So I see this very much as my getting out. And I know that I'm talking to you in different parts of the world. And as I see the names and the locations you're coming in from, it is a pleasure to see you all there. Now, we have now started using Livestorm for our webinars, and it has many qualities. Unfortunately, one of the qualities it has is I can't see any faces. So as I talk to you today, I can see no faces, hear no voices. And I guess what I'm saying is I'd love some interaction, reaction, or just acknowledgement that there are people out there who are listening. So we have a number of devices at our disposal. We have the chat, and we also have questions. We'll stick with questions for pretty much everything we do today, because it keeps it in one place, and it means that I can then see what you're writing into me. What I would like to do, just as we wait for a few more people to join, I'd be interested to know how many of you were here last time. And what I'm going to do, just as an experiment, is I am going to use a poll, and I'm going to send this out to you now. And I'm just going to hit publish poll. And then I want to know who was here last time, who joined me on the last one, which was about confidence. And what's great is I can see that ticking over. So this actually confirms that A, there are people out there, and B, well, maybe they can't hear me. Anyway, maybe that should have been my first poll question, who can hear me. Anyway, thank you for ticking away. And we've got a few of you who were here last time. Last time we talked about confidence, subject close to my own heart. And I'd be interested to know from you, just drop this into the questions section. Those of you who joined me last time, I know there's at least 8 of you because the poll tells me that. What did you get from the last session? What did you take away? Is there anything you've managed to put into action? And was there anything that was particularly useful for you? Just drop a few things into that questions section. And I'll wait for a few things to drop in there. Whilst I'm waiting, thanks for those who joined last time, and thanks for the feedback. Very, very helpful. It helps shape what we do with you. And I'll let you into something that clearly isn't a secret. One of the reasons we do these webinars, it's really business development. And what was great from last time is that we've had some great coaching inquiries, and indeed started a little bit of coaching for the people who joined last time. If you have any queries about coaching, do get hold of my colleague Dan. He is looking after all of this sort of stuff. Now, let's have a little look at what people are dropping in there. A couple of people have said from the last time. Yep, Chris has said less PowerPoint. That is wonderful, Chris. You are a person after my own heart. And yeah, I'm going to use a little bit of PowerPoint today, but I'm going to use it very sparingly. Jason, less and more pause. A few disfluencies in speech aren't bad. They're natural. They're what we do. But if we put some pausing in, we can actually kill off a lot of those disfluencies and actually sound a bit more certain about what we're talking about our own subject. Tobias dropped in, gave a presentation over Zoom, paused more. Tobias, I hope that worked for you. I hope that worked for your team. Great. We have a good quorum of people who've joined us. I'm delighted to say it's another sellout. I say sellout. Obviously, nobody's paid for this, but nevertheless, we have filled all the slots. This platform restricts us in the numbers that we have on it at the moment, and I'm delighted to say that we're filling that up, which is great news. A few more things. Christina, pausing. Yep. Christina said, pausing was such a great tip. Help with the last job interview. Delighted to help. And that's great. We've got a few people joining from different parts of the world, Barcelona, and the In and Out Club in London. Great. Wonderful. Let me move on. Thank you for that little bit of start. Let me also say that actually this session we've now started to publish PDF guides. Some of the guides were things that we used with clients in our open session. We're now got them in PDF electronic form, and they're available to buy on the website. So there's one that relates to this session today and covers the material for today and a whole lot more stuff besides. So have a look on the website for those. And if I really get myself organized on this system, we'll start putting links in for those sorts of things. Great. That is pretty much everything to get us underway. And what I'd like to do is to focus on today, which is about building rapport and establishing digital relationships. I'm going to look at both of those subjects generally, and then how we can read those ideas across into a digital environment. And what I'd love to do is just know a little bit about what you would like to get out of the session today. So again, just drop into the questions section, the sort of things that would be useful for you from today's session on those particular subjects. That would be super handy. That'll keep me on the straight and narrow. Talking of being kept on the straight and narrow, I'm joined today by my colleague Dan. Dan helps organize all of this stuff. They drew lots for this particular task in the Debrett's office. Dan lost, which is why Dan is now on the one helping me organize all of this stuff. So do just drop into that questions section what you're looking to get out of today's session. That would be super helpful. Great, nothing dropped in there yet. There we go. From Liam, how does rapport building online differ from in person? Yeah, absolutely. We're going to hit that fairly quickly. From Robert, financial advisor, meeting prospects via digital. How can we use these tools to establish trust and rapport effectively? It is harder, Robert. That's not in doubt. And I'll give you a few little hints and tips towards the end. How to start new projects with people across different parts of the world, from Bjorn. Yeah, I think some of these things, I think in general terms, we will cover some ideas that will help there. And from William, what are the best tools to use digitally when engaging with prospects for the first time? I'll answer that question up front, and then you'll see how we'll explore that later on. But it is talking to people, absolutely talking to people. Pretty much any platform will do. By all means use, we touched on this last time, by all means use things like PowerPoint, graphics, videos, but use them sparingly, because rapport is the critical thing. And it's very hard to build rapport with PowerPoint. And from Ella, how to build a better rapport with my stakeholders virtually. Now we can't meet in person. Great. Oh, and Diana, how to build a good relationship with a new colleague. Brilliant. All useful stuff. And it is a challenge working in this remotely connected world. What are we going to accomplish in the session today? In the outcomes, in the short session today, I'm going to give you a new way of looking at networking. And we're going to talk about how to make it work in real life and digital, because I'm an optimist and I believe that we will be getting back to doing business, meeting people, going to networking events in the not too distant future. Fingers crossed. I'll pause at various points for questions, and please do just fire those in to the questions box. Initially, we'll just focus on questions around the topic, and then we can broaden that out towards the end to broader content. Okay, here we go. For those of you who dread networking, I'm going to give you a new perspective. That's my promise to you today. A lot of people hate networking because they have to meet new people, or they have to push themselves, or they have to push a product. And I'm going to see if I can change that around. After the huge success of the poll, I'm just going to publish another poll now and ask you, who enjoys networking events? It's either yes, I love them, or no, I go to them because I have to go to them. Here we go. The numbers are ticking up. More people like them at the moment than dislike them. Yeah, networking events are a huge opportunity for all of us, and it was so much easier in the good old days when we were meeting face to face. Yeah, so it's 12 to 8 at the moment. 12 people love them. 8 people go because they have to go. Okay, this is going to help everybody, but clearly the particular focus is on those people who struggle to go to them, or who have challenges around them. Let me pose a question. I'm going to start with a rhetorical question, so don't answer this. What is it we go to networking events for? And I just want you to think about live networking events initially. We'll put a digital spin on it in due course. What is it we go to them for? I'm going to now really pushing the bounds of the technology. Share a media. I have some slides. I'm going to choose that. Boom. And there we go. Hopefully you can see a slide. Okay, I'm going to show a slide now that says why we go to networking events. Your goals. Here we go, all listed down. You don't need me to read them out, but it's things like find a better job, find any job, build a network, all of those things. Have a little look through those. And I draw your attention to the last two, because there is a very human element about networking events. Okay, you've had a chance to look at those. Those are a pretty good example of what might be your goals for a networking event. Now, I'm going to let you into a secret. I'm going to share other people's goals. Yet, of course, it's exactly the same list. Generally speaking, most people go to networking events with pretty much the same goals. And this is your secret to taking a different perspective to networking events. I guess my first point in all of this, if you go with one goal in mind, you limit your chances of being successful. And if you only go with your goals in mind, you make things harder for yourself. Okay, that's our starting point here. Let me end the share. That is that button there. There we go. We're back with my face full screen again. Okay. Now, normally when I talk to people about networking face to face, I do a little exercise with them, and I pick somebody in the front row. Imagine you're sat in the front row, and I say to them, put your hand up like that, and they put their hand up. And then I put my hand up against their hand, so we're pushing like the hands and palms are resting. And without trying, I find that they push back. And this is true for all of us. Because when we feel that people are trying to push things on us, we push back. So it might be watching the adverts on television. We watch them with a bit of cynicism, or we just leave the room. When a politician mounts the podium, we're already thinking, right, I've got my arms folded now. I'm going to be pretty cynical about what they say because they're a politician. Maybe when we're looking at charity collectors in the street, the ones with the clipboards, the chuggers, as they used to be known, charity muggers. Again, they sort of try and get in the way of us, and we try and get out of their way. Broadly speaking, when we feel that people are going to push something on us, there's some sort of resistance, there's some sort of pushback. And actually, if you go to a networking event with the sense you have to push something on other people to get a measure of success for yourself, this affects your mindset and actually ultimately affects your performance. So let me explain a little concept for you. When you go to a networking event, how about going with the mindset of, how can I help other people? That's the mindset to take. Now, you could help them because you have a product that your company sells that is hugely valuable. That's true. You could help them because they're looking to recruit brilliant people, and you are. a brilliant person. But there are lots of other ways that you can help. And I'm going to go back into the slides again. Oops, daisy. That's done that. Oops. Okay. And the point about this, and the slide isn't there for some reason. Okay. What can you do at a networking event that is a help to other people? Imagine you're 23 years old again. You're a graduate. You're looking for a job. How can you be of help? Just think about the goals that we were talking about in the previous slide. People may be looking to recruit. They might not want you, but you could introduce them to people you know. You could find yourself introducing them to people in the room. You might have met somebody 10 minutes ago, you know their name, you know what they're about. Again, you can introduce them. And of course, the only way that you will be able to find out what people want is by asking great questions. That's the secret to it. And that's how you start that interaction. So instead of thinking you've got to go in, give them your name, and then start pushing stuff on them, go over and start pulling things out of them and find out about them. And of course, you don't even have to talk about work, because a lot of people go along to networking events for that human interaction, that sense of, I just want to connect with other people, and I'm not necessarily there just to do business, but to have a good time. Jason has popped up on the questions to say he goes there for the free drinks, and a lot of people do. They go there for a social event. So again, this is another great mindset to take to networking events, which is that it's not all about work, and that you can go there to connect with people and have a good time. And if you can go and help people by being interesting, by being interested in them, again, you're helping other people achieve their goals at networking. Now, I think the point where this really connects with us at Debrett's is this is an idea of care and consideration. It's almost networking etiquette, the idea that you're not there just to push your product or yourself onto other people. Actually, you're there to help other people. They're there to help you. And that kindness is always reciprocated. And when I first started going to networking events, and I started my second career, I was there thinking, I really need to push my product, my training, whatever it might be. Actually, if I just go there to say, I'm going to go along, see who can help, who I can connect with, all of a sudden, it transformed networking events for me. And it's a really good mindset to go to networking events with. Now, how do we build our network in this digital world where we no longer have the networking events? My vision from the good old days, this is now turning into the Heritage Roadshow, of a networking event was that it was a bunch of people stood around a room, either drinking weak coffee or warm white wine, and chatting to each other. We don't have that as an option these days. So what do we do in this digital world? Well, in many ways, if the old-fashioned networking events were very much like speed dating, this is now more like online dating. And for me, the gap between social media and personal and professional, and our personal brand is being blurred, and it's that brand thing that I want you to think about. If you were to, and I know this is terribly uncool, if you were to Google yourself, and I do recommend you do Google yourself, what do you find? You'll find a number of things, some related to work, some related to your personal life, and some that sit sort of in between. So professional life, if I Google myself, there'll be some stuff I've done with the Debrett's. If I Google myself, I might find my Instagram page, which is mostly pictures of dogs, by the way, or the Cotswold countryside, which is very much the personal bit. And then there's LinkedIn, and LinkedIn sort of sits in between, because it's your personal brand, but it is really related to work. Now, imagine you're back at one of these networking events and somebody walks in outlandish fancy dress and completely drunk. Are you going to go and rush up and talk to them? I'm guessing not. They might be, in fact, the very people you try and avoid. If now you think about how we network in a digital world, people may well actually check out your profile before they decide to connect with you on, say, LinkedIn, which is a great way of networking in the digital world. If they find stuff that is too out there, too crazy, there's every chance they might say, do you know what, that's not really the right person to connect with. And again, if this is particularly in relation to jobs, and I know a lot of recruiters use LinkedIn. So really, my first point in networking in the digital world is think about the profile that you're putting out there. It's almost equivalent if you're looking soberly dressed at a networking event and smiling and engaging, people are more likely just to come up and engage with you. In your digital profile, there's an awful lot more detail. But nevertheless, if there's a nice, coherent picture of somebody who looks wise, intelligent, smart, useful, engaging, then people are more likely to approach you. And I get people connecting with me all the time on LinkedIn. I love building the network, and it allows me to actually subsequently reach out. Sometimes I reach out trying to push a product. Sometimes I just reach out with the sort of stuff that I talk about on these webinars. So that for me is one of the secrets. The wonderful thing about networking live is it's quite random that you bump into people. When you're networking in this digital COVID world at the moment we live in, it's a bit more targeted. And so you can afford to be targeted, but again, don't look like you're always pushing something. That would be my secret to you. I'm going to talk a little bit about building rapport in a moment, but let's just take a pause for questions. And have you got any questions you would like to throw in there around the subject of networking? Do please just drop them into the questions section, and I would be delighted to take a look at those. As we go back to the polls, I can see, by the way, that the majority of people enjoy the networking event, 15 to 9. Okay, any questions there on networking? Oops. Have they gone into chat? Okay, we may well come back to those in due course. It might just be a bit of a lag between the questions getting there. Let's talk a little bit now on the next part of this, which is building rapport. And I'm going to throw a couple of ideas in here. These are things almost that you can use as hacks. It's a little bit about changing your perspective again. But I guess it would make sense to start with a definition. Oh, here we go. Michael has just dropped a quick question. What are the best power questions to ask during a networking event? Oh, I don't know about power questions. When we come to talk about questions, there are two sorts of questions. There are open questions and closed questions. The open questions are the ones with the yes/no answers, the very short answers, the ones that don't really go very far. But those questions are a great place to start. They allow you to uncover detail. The simple one is, what is your name? Well, there is only one answer to that. It's your name. And then use those just to build a bit of trust. You're starting to build rapport. And then ultimately what you're looking to do is to ask the questions that get underneath the surface. So you might start asking questions about what company other people work for. That's great. And they can tell you what they do within that business. And then really the sort of questions that get beneath the surface are the ones that are ones about perspective. How are you finding working for Acme Industries? How are Acme Industries doing at the moment? How are Acme Industries coping with the difficult times we find ourselves in? So to my mind, it's the start with the nice, simple, straightforward questions, the open question, the closed questions, and then move on to the open questions that help you uncover things later on. Those are the ones that really help, and they give you a sense of what makes that person tick. They don't always have to be questions about business. They can actually be questions about the other person, about where they live is always a good one, and how they enjoy the area where they live. Interesting question here. What if you start talking to someone, then quickly realize they can't help you or have nothing to offer? Great. No shame at a networking event in making conversations relatively quick, because the point about networking events is you are there to meet lots of people, and people get terrified that they're going to get stuck with one person all night. Some people like being stuck with one person all night because they don't have to go meet anybody new. Either way, there is absolutely no shame at a networking event of connecting with somebody briefly and then saying, it's been lovely talking to you. I'm sure there are other people you'd love to go meet here. I've taken up too much of your time. Do it politely, but everybody should understand the rules at a networking event, that it is about meeting as many people as possible. So there's absolutely no shame. The one thing I would check is, can you help them? Do that before you disappear, and then you can disappear and go and talk to other people with a clear conscience. Great. Thank you for those questions. I'm going to dive on into the next bit, which, as I say, is around building rapport. And I'm going to start with the definition first of all. Rapport is very simply a connection. It's making a connection with somebody else. That idea that you feel comfortable talking to them. And I know a lot of people will meet somebody for the first time, and within a few moments, they'll feel super comfortable talking to them, and they'll feel like they've known them all their life. And that's great. And that really is almost the perfect definition of rapport, where you're very comfortable with somebody. It behoves me, of course, to talk about silences. And when you're in rapport, you're also comfortable with the silences as well. But that's another story for another day. In networking, rapport is hugely important. And I don't think you should really start talking about the business side of things, certainly not trying to talk about what you have to offer until you're really comfortable that you are in rapport with somebody else. How do we do it? Well, there's a little secret here about us humans, that we as humans, we're vain, we're superstitious, we're biased. We're superstitious, we're suspicious, we're biased. I mean, I'm not. Clearly, everybody else is. I guess that's what I'm saying, is that we all have those flaws, but actually that's what makes us human, and actually that's what we can focus on here. Two things to focus on. Firstly, we like people who are like ourselves. We like people who are like us, and we also like people who like us. Now, I just need to unpack those very quickly. We like people who we feel are similar to ourselves, but then we also like people who give the impression that they like us, and that liking becomes mutual. So with these two lovely little gems of knowledge, let's go and take these for a little walk and see how we can make this work in real life or in a digital context. In order to connect with people who are like ourselves, we can do two things. Firstly, we can find people who are like us and then only connect with them. And interestingly, a lot of my coaching conversations have been with people who feel that when they talk to people who don't have the same mindset, the same view as themselves, that it's difficult to connect with them, it's impossible to connect with them, and it's probably not even worth it. And some people, in the extreme cases, they often feel that these other people see the world wrong. Everybody's entitled to their view of the world. Everybody's entitled to operate in whatever style they want. So a lot of the coaching is around changing that mindset, and I've done a lot of work there. So really, if we want to, actually, I've often seen this in real life. I've worked a number of companies where they've been running networking events, and they've said, look, come to one of our networking events and I'll show you how this works. And the person who's inviting me says, right, you see that corner over there, that's all of my team. That corner over there, those are all the clients. And it's almost like kids at a teenage disco, where the boys in one corner and the girls in the other, and nobody talks to each other. And actually often that comes from people feeling like, I don't want to talk to those people because I don't know them and they might not be like me. So we need to get out of that mindset. Second option, perhaps more usefully, is to make yourself a little bit more like the people you're talking to. And this is really helpful with rapport. Now, I don't mean an impersonation. I don't mean if somebody's got a regional or national accent, you should try and copy that. You don't have to be a clone of them by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not even talking about mirror imaging. In order to build rapport, you have to observe them closely and then just reflect back a little bit of their behavior. What do I mean by that? What sort of things can you reflect back? Let me tell you a little story, which I hope will be useful. In the good old days, back before March, I used to go to a local pub where they had a restaurant in there. And sometimes I'd have a drink whilst waiting for whoever's joining me for dinner. And I could sit and watch people having dinner. And I would know who was in rapport. Often when I ask that people, how do we know that question? How do we know when people are in rapport? They say, oh, well, so they're laughing and joking and smiling. You don't have to be laughing and joking and smiling to be in rapport. What you're looking, if the two people, as I sit and watch them in the restaurant, reflecting each other's behavior back to each other. So normally, if you have two people who are talking calmly and quietly and seriously, one person's engaged and listening and the other person's talking, and then it flips around. That's what rapport looks like. Sometimes there'll be people having a very loud, animated conversation with lots of gestures. If they're both doing that together, they're in rapport. Sometimes people will be in silence, and you can usually tell if it's a comfortable silence or not. Yeah, that's not in rapport. Whether there's one person, they're on the mobile phone or they're looking at the phone, that's not in rapport. So it's that connection we're looking for. How do you do this? What can you reflect back? Mood. If they're lively and animated, you can be lively and animated. If they're confident, draw a little bit of their confidence, reflect that confidence back to them. Pace. If they're talking quickly, then talk quickly. If they're talking slowly, slow your own pace down. Emotiveness. If they're really happy, great, reflect that back. If they're less animated, less obviously outgoingly happy, reflect that back to them. So as we circle back to one of the questions I had at the beginning, how do we do this in the digital world? No great secret. It's exactly the same, but it is harder. So the secret is watch closely. Critical thing is to make sure people have their screens on. So if I'm going into a small group of people, clients, or whoever it might be, I will absolutely have my camera on so that people can see me. And that just encourages them to do it. If it's a small group, ask people to have their camera on, because then that allows you to see a little bit of them and to see how they're reacting to what you have to say. That would be one of my first tips. Again, the same as before. Pause, listen, and watch, which might sound a bit creepy, but it isn't. It's about watching closely, and it is actually a great compliment to people to pay attention to them. How else do you do it? If you're presenting, again, do it with minimum slides. And you see what I do here. I show slides, I take them down, and I go back to this screen here. I don't show a ton of slides. I wouldn't show 20 slides and then go down back to where we were before. I show a few slides and then go back to other people so you can get some reaction off them. And if you can see they're anxious about what they're being presented, you can help deal with that anxiety. If you're talking glibly about how wonderful everything and they have anxieties that they're reflecting in their body language and their engagement, you can pick up on that, and that helps you connect and helps you build that rapport. Other things to do is when other people are talking, smile, nod encouragingly, and show that you are listening, and you can do that by nodding. A lot of people feel that they switch the camera on, but they're not speaking, and so therefore nobody's paying attention to them. I guarantee if we had a different platform where I could see your faces, I'd be looking for little bits of reaction here and there, because it helps me enormously, and you can do that to help the people that you're speaking to. So if you're the one doing the selling, if you're the one being interviewed on a webinar, then by all means, smile, nod encouragingly, even when you're not speaking, because that helps the other person and helps them, let me circle back to my original point, to like you. The really simple idea. One of the other things I do, and I know I'm out on a limb, I'm showing my age here, but I make a point of having my camera up at this level. I know one of the things that the Gen Z do is they always have the camera down there, and it's almost uncool to have a camera up at this level when you're having a Zoom chat, a web chat with somebody. I disagree. I think get the camera up there because it's much easier to smile, engage, and build rapport with people when you're looking at them in the eye, as it feels, and try and get the camera close to the face of the person you're talking to. So some little tips there on doing that. One of the other things I find really helpful when it comes to building rapport is listen. Now, I'm very conscious today that I can't hear anybody, so I haven't been able to do that with you, but I hope you're listening. And listening is a great skill. And actually, a lot of people say, oh, I'm a great listener, but most people aren't great listeners. All they are is great waiters. They're just waiting for a pause so that they can dive in, because actually they just want to try and be clever, show how much they know. They want to be funny. They want to boast and say how great their product, their company is, whatever it might be. Or they're waiting for a pause to be able to get in with the sell. Or they might wait for a pause to talk about something they're interested in. One of the best ways of building rapport is genuinely listening to what people are saying. Because if you listen, you can reflect back not only the sort of language they use, the way in which they speak, but you can actually reflect back the words they said. Now a few minutes ago, you mentioned this. I'd love to explore that. Again, that's another great way of building rapport with people. It goes back to that point where you start with listening. If you're doing with teams, and I know somebody was really interested in talking about how they can build rapport with stakeholders virtually, somebody was talking about building colleagues, get people into the listening habit, particularly if you're leading the conversation. Don't feel because you're leading the meeting that you have to do 90% of the talking. Just give people a bit of space to talk. And then when you talk, you can reflect back to them what you've heard. That's a great way of building rapport, because you're showing that you're listening. Great. There we go. That's the bulk of the content I had for you today. What I would love to do is, I tell you what, let's just, as always, take a few questions, and then I will share with you while the questions are coming in. Let's just go, and I'm going to sum up everything that we've spoken about today in summary. So I talked about rethinking networking. Go in with the mindset, how can I help? Who can I help? And then when it comes to building rapport is essential for networking. When you're networking, don't just network with people like you. When you found someone like you, stick with them. No, absolutely not. Make sure you adapt what you do to be able to connect with the other person, reflect back a little bit of their behaviors, their perspectives. I put mood, language, behavior here. And last but not least, for building rapport, one of the best things is to listen actively. Great, that's it. Let's see if you've got any questions. In fact, Dawn sent a question a little while back. How do you handle it if cameras aren't allowed? Then it goes back to almost like an old-fashioned phone call. So it all comes down to the listening. That's the answer, and you can do that really effectively in even in a Zoom chat. Just think of it. Just put yourself into that mindset, and then get into listening. And what are they really saying? How do you? Oh, good question from Dobroshna. How do you carry on a presentation if you don't have any feedback from the audience? Here's a little tip from the hot seat. What you have to assume is that the presentation is going really well. And if you assume that the presentation is going really well, you'll probably present really well too, which is great. Plan some breaks in it. There are too many people who just go, right, I've got, 20-minute presentation, I've got 40 slides, doof, 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 and rattle through them. My advice is have a minimum number of slides, maybe 5 slides for 20 minutes, no more than. And then don't feel you have to show them all in one go. Put some breaks in. That's the way. Go back to getting your face on the screen, seeing other people's faces on the screen. That's the way to do it. That just helps it. Ask for feedback as you go. So that concludes the first half of my presentation. Any questions so far? Question from TP here. When you're listening, how do you handle it when the other person carries on without waiting for a response? And you need to make a point, especially if there's no camera. Yes, it's a real challenge. Interrupting politely, I think, is that question. That question is addressing. You have to just make a little note so that you can go back over the points. My advice is when you do then get a chance to speak, go back over the points, go back over what you're responding, and be succinct. Typically, other people, when you carry on, means that people just talk and talk and talk more often than to no effect. Life would be simpler if we were all really succinct. I mean, the subject we're talking about today, I could probably do 2 days worth of workshops on this. That really helps with skills, but I've got a lot of knowledge. What I've done today is to give you something I hope is genuinely useful, but done it in a way that's succinct. Okay, let's come back out of the summary. Let's go back into full screen mode. Any other questions on that? While I wait for that to come back, a quick reminder that we would be delighted to talk to people about coaching sessions. We'd be delighted to talk about working with your company. If you think what Debrett's has to talk about, what Debrett's has to offer, then by all means get in touch with Dan. We would love to know, and we would be delighted to talk to your companies and find out how we could help them. So do drop us a line there. We've got the workbook, which is available on the website. So dive onto the website and you can get an electronic PDF version of a little workbook that relates to this session and a few other things besides. Which leaves me for the last thing to say. What I'll do when the session finishes in a couple of minutes, I'll leave the chat and the questions open, and I'm happy to take any questions not related to this session necessarily. Please fire away. But it leaves me to say we will follow up with an email from this. We'd love to know what you would like to see in other sessions. Do give me some ideas there. We're going to have one more session before Christmas. Think of it as like last day at school before Christmas. So you can bring a game in, fancy dress, mince pies, mulled wine. That would be the last one, but we would love to do that. I'd love to find out what would be helpful for you for that final session. So do connect with Debrett on LinkedIn if you're not already. We love to put information out there. We have a newsletter that talks to all of the stuff that we talk about here. So by all means, get in touch. I will leave the chat open for a couple of minutes. So if you've got any more questions, do fire away. But it's been my pleasure to talk to you. And in the meantime, stay safe. Great. Fire in any other questions that you might have. Polls still going up, but on balance, more people enjoy networking events than don't enjoy them, which is good, because that is a great secret for success. Question dived in here. Do I need to wear a jacket and tie when I'm meeting people for the first time on Zoom? And that's compared to, normally I'd wear it in person. Generally speaking, no. Think about the culture of the organization you're engaging with. is it a jacket and tie culture? I talk to a lot of people in some very jacket and tie traditional organizations, and I haven't seen anybody wearing a tie since lockdown. Okay, from Bjorn, what are your top 3 when creating rapport digitally? So let's tackle that in a couple of ways. Digitally, when we're going over Zoom calls and camera, again, maximum FaceTime, minimum PowerPoint. Smiling and nodding is my second point, to make it feel like a normal conversation. In this case, actually, the only face I can see is my own face. But the funny thing is, if I smile, I end up smiling back at myself, if that makes sense. And then my third point is give people space to talk and really listen. And those will absolutely smash it digitally when doing a Zoom conference. We can also think a little bit about how you connect when you're doing direct messaging. My top tips there would be, when you're direct messaging or emailing, start with a certain degree of formality and then work down to find the right level of formality. And again, little things like when you're dialing off a particular message stream with clients, it's often really useful to say, I hope that answers all your questions. Get in touch if there's anything else you need. And it just gives the conversation a bit of structure. So those are a couple of things that I find really helpful. Great. Great. And people put some very nice sign-offs here. I'm just seeing if there's any questions. No, lots of thank yous, which is wonderful, from wonderful parts of the world: Georgia, USA, Chicago, USA, Hampshire, this time UK. Great. Thank you all very much for your kind words. I'm going to check questions. Oh, and one more question from Christina. Can we find somewhere the recorded version of Tips for Confidence session that you referred to at the beginning? I will check back with Dan on this one. It was posted up on the great, a recording. I think a recording. Dan's just messaging me. A recording will be on the webinar email. I think we had got the confidence session up on. It was available at the end of the last session, and I think we're going to post some of these on another channel, YouTube. If you think that's useful, then we'll do it. But this session will certainly be available, I think, directly to you on this platform for a week. But we'll also put a link in on another medium. Dan is just dived in again, who will keep me on the straight and narrow. All on YouTube too. There we go. Thanks, Dan. Great. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I am going to dial off here, but do all stay safe and do keep in touch.